These are the things that give us our aptitude to lead to our M, and that's mental clarity. When you know what's going on, why you're doing it, and you still have that desire, that gives you that mental clarity. And I always hear, I guess it's a term in small business or entrepreneurs, this imposter syndrome. And I never quite got why people would even dare to call themselves an imposter. At some point in time, we're all going to be beginning a journey. At some point in time, we're all going to be novices, albeit we are more experienced than we were yesterday. So even with this little acronym, I hope it helps others to understand that you can live the dream, truly loving it, by increasing your self-esteem and reducing that imposter syndrome myth.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Ponto. Each week I bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week I'm excited to connect with Shenita-Ann Grymes. As a passionate public healthcare practitioner and founder of Precision Wellbeing located in Washington, D.C., she started her journey in emergency medical care and quickly saw the need to provide preventative care to the community. Since her matriculation at Howard University, she continues to make strides in her personal journey of health and wellness and encourages this in others. Congrats on Precision Wellbeing and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you for the welcome.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on the show because I think you're a perfect person to talk about something that a lot of founders miss and which causes them to struggle to gain momentum early on, which is being able to communicate and have a good understanding of their why and their passion and the impact they're trying to have with their business. Because a lot of them, especially when they're going into a raising money, whether it's an early seed round or a later stage round, they dive into the kind of data and the science of the tech way too much, and they don't have enough of that. Here's why the people behind it care so much. So tell me more about your approach to this and how you see it helping your business.
Oh, definitely. I appreciate the intro. The relations that we have are key to everything. I'll add one to that, the relation to ourselves. So seeing ourselves as human and wearing our business hat and then our family hats and the many other hats that we wear is really a key point of what I'll be discussing today, titled Living the Dream and Loving It. Whereas we can break down what the dream means for you, and then I'll also kind of share some ways where you can check in with yourself to make sure that you're still relating to yourself as a confident business owner and able to share that with the customers you serve.
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of disconnect that people have with their own sense of self, or they're often, especially entrepreneurs, they get the goals or the success definitions or metrics, they get it from external sources and think, okay, if I'm going to be successful, it has to be based on what someone else considers successful, not what they consider successful. And then even if they do achieve that, they still feel kind of hollow inside because it's not a real fulfilling goal that they set for themselves. It was some external metric or external goalpost for success. So I think being more aware and connected with oneself helps them not only set goals that matter, but also ones that are going to be right for their, like I said, all the hats they're wearing as they're also an entrepreneur.
Oh, definitely. And getting started on this journey, I was immediately faced with, hey, what type of company is this? And then that's when we hear the 3 buckets of starting out as a entrepreneur. Is this just a hobby? Is this just to fund your lifestyle? Or are you really transitioning into a small business? So those main buckets kind of haunted me for a while, for the first year or two of my business journey, until I had a moment to take a step back and realize I could love what I'm doing and love what I'm building. And that is what's allowed me to attract partners in the technology space and even build my team to have strong contractors and employees.
Yeah, when especially because there's so many options for people who they can do business with, and the way you can really differentiate yourself or stand out with a vendor, or just find the ones that are going to be the best business relationships, are the ones you also gel with and have that resonance with on a personal level. Because if it's just a transactional sort of thing, then it's going to be, you're going to easily replaceable, or just not as fulfilling, or oftentimes a source of stress, and it'll be seen as an expense or as a liability instead of this asset to the business. And so having that personal connection with the people that you're partnering with, especially early on in a business's life cycle, that's way more important than I think people give credit to.
Oh, that's the only way we were able to garner some of our first contracts is, like they say, some of the best marketing is word of mouth. So our clients being able to see myself and the team show up, respond to inquiries, even complaints or concerns with compassion, understanding that we're going to bring the same level of service each time and really tailor our solutions, that allowed us to get that word of mouth. And that's how all of our business to business contracts came in the beginning, with someone saying, hey, I know a great group. Hey, why don't you work with them? So the piece about being able to show our best face to the client really allowed me to take moment to take inventory of how we're doing our staff development, our team huddles and check-ins, because the team is the face of the business. As much as I, as the owner, can be there, really pouring into my team as, in a sense, business managers coming in the door, that allowed me to have a better company representation with these other businesses.
Yeah, because as you're building out those first initial like contractors or team members that are really going to shape and form the culture, and are going to inform and impact those initial client experiences, that are, especially when you're so early on, are going to make and break your reputation and really establish either the momentum or cause things to stall. That personal side of things makes those much more likely to be beneficial. And like you said, get that word of mouth going early on, because as I'm sure you know from like all the kind of market research and stuff we talked about you doing before we started recording, that word of mouth is a lot less expensive to get compared to doing like outward facing marketing and having to do all the research and create all the content and all the strategy beyond that. Whereas if people just are recommending you because they enjoyed your experience and know you as personally, then that's going to be way more valuable than any piece of marketing you could put out by yourself.
And with that, I do, Karl, have tools that I put into my pocket. As a trained health and behavioral health coach, I come up with my own bit of acronyms. So living the dream is actually an acronym in which I can take self-inventory. So the D stands for diligence. You're thinking all business owners are diligent, but once we lose that steam, or that desire is not forwarding us from day to day, week to week, that for me was a stop point to say, am I still looking into this field correctly? Am I still applying myself appropriately? Or are there areas where I need to make more automations and be more streamlined? The rationale is next. So that's the R. So the rationale is, why am I doing this? Whether it's taking on a new client, expanding a service, these things all play into my rationale, because I have to know my why to get to the E. And the E is enthusiasm. If we can't do everything that we do with the smile, we better not do it. So we like to approach everything with an enthusiastic spirit behind it, because then that shows great effort and quality work. And then, of course, without quality work, you wouldn't have the A, the aptitude. You have to know what's going on, being intelligent in the industry, continuing to learn. These are the things that give us our aptitude to lead to our M, and that's mental clarity. When you know what's going on, why you're doing it, and you still have that desire, that gives you that mental clarity. And I always hear, I guess it's a term in small business or entrepreneurs, this imposter syndrome. And I never quite got why people would even dare to call themselves an imposter. At some point in time, we're all going to be beginning a journey. At some point in time, we're all going to be novices, albeit we are more experienced than we were yesterday. So even with this little acronym, I hope it helps others to understand that you can live the dream, truly loving it, by increasing your self-esteem and reducing that imposter syndrome myth.
Yeah, I do think I really like the acronym and the different approaches to and be more aware of like your enthusiasm and the rationale for why you're doing this, because I think with how fast people feel like they have to move for their business to be successful, they often, and also seeking efficiency and automation, all these other things that businesses seem so enamored with, the corners that often get cut or are those things that allow you to show up with enthusiasm, and you're not really taking the time to, what's the rationale for this business vision? Are we really staying true to what we really care about, what our vision is, or are you just kind of chasing fads or going after what seems like an easy win when it actually is undermining your long-term success because it's not really something that you're enthusiastic about. It's not something that really promotes your vision or what your brand stands for, what you care about. And so if you are not having these regular check-ins, then you're getting the disconnect between yourself and what you really started the business to do and what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis. And so that can lead to a lot of mental and emotional challenges and struggle for the business. If you're burning out and you're not really enjoying it anymore, it feels more like a grind. And then I think the imposter syndrome thing is important to be aware of, because I know there's been a number of interviews talking about how the more successful you get, the more that imposter syndrome can grow and be even more and more influential or kind of heavier as you. And so if you're not able to handle it and work to mitigate its effects early on, it's not going to get any easier. So it's important to have that muscle toned and strengthened before it gets overwhelming, because if you're suddenly waking up and feeling like you can't handle what's going on, you're in the wrong spot, then as a leader, everyone's going to feel that in the way you show up, and it's going to cause, again, a lot of issues that can stall or just destroy your company's growth. So I think it seems like a kind of fluffy, like woo-woo, kind of like at first glance, like, oh, dream, how can that possibly be important for the business mindset? But it's the different pieces of the acronym, when understood how they impact the business's results, are very efficient, and clear understanding of them can really have a huge ROI when applied properly.
Of course. And at any point in time, as you mentioned, a muscle, sometimes we do need to check in with our dreams. Muscles can be built. We can actually strengthen muscle connection. So there are a few checkpoints that I like to think about, even for myself, taking to my board of advisors or in my personal reflection time. So these checkpoints, one, allow me to see if I am thinking rationally. First one is being able to see, am I able to take criticism? Can someone say anything about what I'm building and I receive what they're saying, weigh it against what I do know, and look at the things that I don't know, and then take from it those points that I can garner from it? Another checkpoint that I use within myself: if there was a service or opportunity that presented itself, would I be able to pivot? Or would I feel so emotionally tied to what I'm doing, I would not be able to meet this new service or solution? And then the third piece, where I say is a good checkpoint to see if we need to build up those resilient muscles, is to see if we were to stop today, if there were at any point a medical tragedy, a lifestyle uphill, or just your world gets flipped upside down, could I stop what I'm doing and say, hey, I feel fulfilled. I've done my best. I put forth the best effort. And those are the just few checkpoints that I use even for myself, and speak with my advisors about to make sure that we are still implementing living the dream and loving it.
Yeah, I really think that, especially that second one about pivoting, can we pivot from this, or are we too emotionally invested in it? Is a really important one because it requires you to balance what we kind of talked about earlier about the enthusiasm for what you're doing. You got to be able to bring that enthusiasm, but it can't be so precious to you. You can't become like a sacred cow where you can't stand the idea of giving it up. Or because even if you're not having to pivot, but then if you're not able to like delegate tasks to someone else because you have to be the one doing it all the time, then you're going to bottleneck your growth. And so you have to find that balance point between having enough enthusiasm to show up and keep doing the work and be delivering exceptional experiences for your employees and your clients and stuff, but you can't be so tied to it that if suddenly the market shifts and it's no longer a viable thing and you have to pivot to something else, that you cling to it too long and let it drag you down because it no longer fulfills it's no longer viable or whatever, like the change in circumstances requires. So I think that's, of those three check-ins, I think that's one that is really stands out to me because it's something that it's kind of the over application of the enthusiasm and not being aware of that amount of kind of emotional dependency is a bad thing. But you also need to have enough to get like even to have the enthusiasm to show up, like I said. And I think also the thinking rationally one, or just being able to take criticism is, I think also important because there's, as a leader, especially one from a startup, you can't assume you know everything that you need to know. So you're going to be getting feedback and advice from people, whether it's mentors or your team or your board or other or investors and stuff. And again, it's if you can't accept that you have a knowledge gap or a skill gap or some thing where you're not yet good enough or you don't have enough, then and you can't handle that without your ego like getting defensive and you getting like reacting instead of responding to it. I think that is also such a critical skill for and habit for founders and leaders to get into, is being aware of how they handle that, because it can, one, have a huge impact on the quality of the relationships between you and your other people that are helping you run this business or launch it. But also it's if you aren't able to handle that, then it's not just a business skill you're lacking. It's going to be affecting all your relationships. And it's probably something like you don't just need to work on for your business to be successful, but any of your personal relationships are also going to be impacted by that. So it's one of those things where it's not just a leadership or an entrepreneur skill. It's just a human skill that a lot of people need to work on. So I thought that was really interesting.
What a great point. As you have this platform, it's all relational. As much as I can relate better to myself, I can treat my staff, contractors, and consultants with that care, compassion, and concern. And then that translates to the good service we offer our clients.
Yeah, and that the way you show up, or especially if you're getting that feedback or you're connecting with your direct reports or your mentors or your board or your employees, all that, when you set that example as a leader, then it ripples out through your entire team. And especially if it's a fairly low head count, then it doesn't take a long time for the way you show up to be perceived and mirrored by those around you. And so for people that are listening or watching that aren't happy with the way some of their team members are showing up or like they're performing, it's probably a good idea to take a look at yourself in the mirror and analyze how you're showing up, because odds are they're reflecting back at you the way you're behaving. And if you're not able to see that in yourself, then you're never going to have a chance of improving their behavior, because you're the problem.
Well, it can definitely start from the head, but it could also be healed from the heart. So I hope this message really resonates with all business or leaders or managers of homes, even to realize that a part of living the dream and loving it starts with how you relate to yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Shenita-Ann. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please like, leave a review, and subscribe. If you want to connect with either of us, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.